Hello everybody and welcome back to Native English with Chris. Now I've been planning today's lesson all week, so I haven't been sleeping much, but I've been looking forward to teaching you a new tense, so I hope you've been practicing your English in preparation for today's lesson. So as some of you may have already guessed, today I'm going to teach you about the present perfect continuous tense, which I have already used 4 times in the introduction to this video. Did you notice all 4 times? Maybe rewind and have another quick listen if you didn't. But it demonstrates what an important tense this is and how commonly it's used amongst natives and English learners. And I'm also going to teach you how this tense is different from the present perfect simple tense. These tenses often get mixed up and confused, and often my students ask me what is the difference because they don't know. And I've already done a video lesson on the present perfect simple tense, which you can watch here for a bit of preparation for today's lesson if you would like. And make sure you stay tuned till the end of the lesson, because there'll be a bit of a practical exercise in which you can get involved in order to test the knowledge that you've learnt in today's lesson. And just before we get started, could I ask you to please subscribe to my English channel if you want to see new and interesting English lessons every week. So we'll start off with the form of the present perfect continuous tense. The form is subject plus have or has plus been plus verbing. So there always needs to be a subject, there always needs to be have or has, there always needs to be been, and then there can be any verb, but it must be in the continuous form, so it must be a verbing. For example, I've been teaching English for 10 years. I, subject, have been teaching, verbing, English for 10 years. I started 10 years ago and I am still teaching English now. So the present perfect continuous is used for actions or activities that started in the past and are still happening up to now, or have just finished in the very recent past, so that you can still notice the effects of them now in the present. For example, I've been working hard all week, so I'm very tired now. Now that could mean I'm still working very hard, which I am, or I've just finished in the very near past, so that you can still see the effects on me that I'm very tired. Or I could say, I have been giving my students homework for years, but they haven't been doing it. You know who you are. Or in a question format, you could say, what have you been doing today? Have you been studying all day? Have you been seeing your friends? Have you been tidying your house? What have you been doing? Can I say, I have been knowing you for 2 years? This is not a good sentence, obviously. That's why I'm asking it. Can any of you work out why it's not a good sentence, though? This is not a good sentence because in the present perfect continuous, we can only use action verbs. Now, action verbs are verbs which involve an action, like to play, or to do, or to watch. These are all actions, and with all of these verbs, you can use them in the continuous form as a verbing, like playing, running, watching. However, the verb to know in the sentence, I have been knowing you, this verb is what we call a non-action verb. It doesn't involve an action. Therefore, this sentence would have to be in the present perfect simple tense. I have known you for 2 years. So know is a non-action verb. Also need, want, have in terms of ownership. So you couldn't say, I have been having a car for 10 years. It would have to be, I have had a car for 10 years. So this is one of the key differences between the present perfect simple and the present perfect continuous. With the present perfect continuous, you can only use action verbs. However, if you have a non-action verb, you must use the present perfect simple. Another key difference between these tenses is that the present perfect continuous, which we're looking at, focuses on a continuous activity that is still happening or has just finished, whereas the present perfect simple focuses on the completion of an activity. Now that might sound difficult to understand, so I'll give you a few examples to help you out. So I could say, I have drunk 3 coffees today. Now those 3 coffees are completed, therefore we use the present perfect simple. Or I could say, I have been drinking coffee all day. Now that means I've drunk a lot of coffee today and maybe I'm still drinking coffee or I've just finished. But in this one, we're describing the continuous aspect of the activity. Therefore, we use the present perfect continuous. Or I could say, I have travelled to many countries in my life. I have travelled to these countries at some point before now, but the trips are over, they are completed. Therefore, we use the present perfect simple. Or I could say, I have been travelling for the last month. Now in this sentence, I am still travelling. We're focusing on the continuous activity still happening. Therefore, we use the present perfect continuous. Now this is the main difference between these two tenses that you have to remember. The present perfect simple focuses on the completion of activities at any time up to the present, whereas the present perfect continuous focuses on activities that are still happening up to the present or have just finished, as we've already said. Now there are some verbs and some sentences in which you can use both tenses and it's fine to use both. For example, I have lived in Prague for 7 years, or I have been living in Prague for 7 years. So with the verb live, it's fine to use both. Or I have worked at the company for 5 years. I have been working at the company for 5 years. In these sentences, it's okay to use both. However, it's more common to use the present perfect continuous because these things are still happening. So if I just came to the lesson to start teaching you and I was all red and sweaty, what might you say? Keep it clean. So you might say, Chris, have you been running or have you been exercising? Because I'm not exercising right now, but I've just finished. So you're focusing on a continuous activity up to that point. Okay, so hopefully you understand how to use the present perfect continuous tense now. We're just going to do a little exercise where I'm going to give you an incorrect sentence and I'd like you to have a think about it and try to correct it based on the knowledge and information that you've learned so far in today's lesson about how to use this tense. So the first sentence is, I have been playing football for years. So you can have a little think about this. So the correct sentence should be, I have been playing football for years, because you need the verbing in there, not just the infinitive. I have been living in England until I was 20 years old. So again, have a little think about it. Pause the video maybe if you like. So the correct sentence here should be, I lived in England until I was 20 years old, because in this sentence we're talking about something that happened up until a point in the past. So here we just need to use the past simple. Remember, we only use the present perfect continuous to talk about things that have been happening up until the present. So I could say, I have been living in Prague for 7 years because I still live here now. Or if I lived in England, I could say, I have been living in England my whole life. I have been needing a car for ages. So the correct sentence here should be, I have needed a car for ages, because need is a non-action verb, so we can't use the present perfect continuous. You could say, I have been driving a car for ages, even though that's a completely different meaning, but you need to use an action verb, remember, in the present perfect continuous. So there we go, just a quick review. The form of the present perfect continuous is subject plus have or has plus been plus verbing, and we use the present perfect continuous to talk about activities that started in the past and are still happening in the present or have just finished. We only use it with action verbs. If you have a non-action verb, you should use the present perfect simple. And the main difference between the present perfect simple and the present perfect continuous is that this focuses on the completion of activities and this focuses on activities still happening in the present. And if you want to learn about any of the other tenses I have made an English lesson containing all 12 English tenses. It's a quick review of all 12 tenses, so it's quite a difficult lesson, but if that's your thing, then give it a watch here. And if you like today's video, please hit that like button, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.